Nice to have you. We'll take your calls today, 800-859-0957. Kevin Dietz and myself, Tom Jordan, love to talk with you. And your texts, we'll read those at 800-859-0WJR. So more hostages have been released from Hamas in Gaza, Kevin, but there are still, more than 140 that have not yet been released. So the sixth batch of hostages are expected to be released today, maybe 10 more or so to add to the more than 60 who have been released. So
the pause is allowing some humanitarian efforts to take place. I don't know what is happening with Hamas, if this is giving them an advantage.
Yeah, when you hear from people over there, like in Israel, on that side of it, there is kind of 50-50 in terms of how they feel about this. They're elated that the hostages are being released, but they're also gravely concerned about what might happen again if Hamas is not rooted out of Gaza, because they don't want to have another October the 7th taking place. And you read about this in some of the media outlets in Israel and in the region, is that Israel and Hamas, they might agree to another ceasefire lasting a couple of days or more in order to, of course, do much of the same, more of this exchange with the hostages and the Palestinian prisoners, and to continue bringing the humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip. But here is the complication. And Ambassador John Kirby, he's a spokesman for the National Security Council, yesterday, he touched upon the fact that very few Americans have been released, right? So none were released yesterday. And he said that they don't know if Hamas even is aware of all the hostage locations, or if they even have custody of the hostages. Because remember, there are other terrorist factions who also have these hostages, like Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and they're described as even worse than Hamas. So there's not a lot of hope. Maybe today there'll be an American that is released. I think there's been a total of 3. There is little Abigail that was released, now 4 years old, and a couple others a couple of weeks back. But other than that, and there haven't been more. And we know there are Americans in custody still. And the United Nations and Joe Biden seems to be pushing for a ceasefire as well. But there are some dire consequences of allowing Hamas to continue to win this current conflict. And one of them might be, hey, listen, this pays off. If you attack Israel like they did and you create, let's say, a Palestinian state for them, this encourages more and more terrorism, Kevin. And Alan Dershowitz wrote about this yesterday.
Yeah, Alan Dershowitz suggests that recognizing a Palestinian state might reward terrorists and lead to further violence. Someone else who does not support a two-state solution is Benjamin Netanyahu. The Biden administration is pushing for a two-state solution. Is it a good idea or a bad idea? Let's bring in Alan Dershowitz, constitutional attorney. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good. It's the best idea in the world, except for all the others. I mean, it's just to do it now unilaterally would be outrageous. Ultimately, I've been favoring a two-state solution since 1970. I wrote my first piece favoring a two-state solution, but you don't bring about a two-state solution by murdering 1,200 Israelis, raping women, beheading babies. That's not the way you bring it about. And if the administration, the Biden administration, now calls for an end of Israel's attempt to destroy Hamas, it's coming to a theater near you. If Hamas wins this in Israel, it will export terrorism. That has to be a message.
I absolutely believe that Joe Biden is listening to the likes of Rashida Tlaib. We had a Democratic strategist who said, no, there's no way that he is. I think absolutely he is. And, she's denouncing what she calls these war crimes by Israel against Hamas, but ignoring the countless war crimes by Hamas. And you mentioned the Hamas hospitals. I watched your podcast yesterday, and I think it's a brilliant phrase. That's a war crime. They're using these hospitals in Gaza as shields, essentially, and the patients and the children in them. Why is Hamas getting away with this, do you think?
Because of people like some of the members of Congress for whom, they believe in this thing called intersectionality, which means the world is divided into oppressors and oppressed. And the oppressors are white people, Christian people, Jewish people. The oppressed are people of color, Arabs, Muslims, even those that are extraordinarily wealthy. And under this intersectionality, the oppressed can do no right and the oppressors can do no wrong. And Hamas gets away with it. And it's ultimately anti-American. And the reason that there's so much opposition to Israel by radical leftists is largely because Israel is such a close ally of the United States. And a lot of what we hear is really anti-American. A lot of the kids who are campaigning against Israel on college campuses hate America as somehow innocent when they're as guilty as could be.
They're very crafty in their messaging, and they've been able to characterize themselves as the victim in this. And you said something yesterday that I listened to, and you repeated this phrase from way back, saying, regarding this conflict, Israel and Hamas, saying that the Jews could say to them, listen, we could eventually forgive you, Hamas, for killing our children, but we will never forgive you for forcing us to kill your children.
Yeah,
is that for real?
Meir.
Yeah.
No, that's Golda Meir said that. She's on videotape.
Is that for real? You think that's the strategy that Hamas employs?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Hamas wants to kill as many civilians as possible. Hopefully they'll be Israelis, but if they're Palestinians, okay. They have what is called the dead baby strategy. They wait for Israel to kill a baby, a real innocent person, a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and they parade him in front of the television cameras. They don't explain that this is somebody who was used as a human shield by Hamas, and that legally, morally, politically, and in every other way, Hamas is responsible for the death of civilians who were used as human shields. Using human shields in violation of international law. You wouldn't know that from the UN because the UN never condemns anybody but Israel. Israel is condemned, forget about this war, more than all the other countries of the world combined.
It's remarkable.
It
is remarkable.
Iran, more than Cuba, more than China. All the countries of the world combined, Israel is condemned more.
And they get away with it. Yeah. Over and over again. Thanks for what you do. I appreciate it. And thanks for joining us. Alan Dershowitz, constitutional attorney. Thanks so much. More to come. Your calls are next. 800-859-0WJR.